As modern-day Rotarians living in North Carolina, when we speak of polio, we tend to think of Pakistan, Afghanistan, or some other land far from home. But there was a time, not all that long ago, that just the word polio struck fear in the heart of every mother in Gaston County. And our community stood at the heart of the Tar Heel State's efforts to aid those afflicted with the disease. For it was here that state officials agreed to build the North Carolina Orthopedic Hospital, high on a hill along New Hope Road, from where you could see downtown Charlotte. Opened in 1921, the hospital closed its doors in 1979. The polio threat in the U.S. had been eliminated. But the lives of 4 Gastonia residents intersected with polio and the North Carolina Orthopedic Hospital. Dr. George Miller came to the hospital in 1950 as a surgeon. The woman he would later marry, Judy, was a physical therapist specializing in polio patients who worked at a hospital in Greensboro, where she would treat a young polio victim by the name of David Stultz, who would later marry a girl who worked for Dr. Miller at the orthopedic hospital here, Jennie. To learn more about polio in the mid-20th century and the state hospital on the hill in Gastonia, the 4 longtime friends sat down together for a chat.
Well, the orthopedic hospital is a very interesting institution, and this started from a dream of a gentleman here in Gastonia who first thought about orphan children, and he was anxious to do something to benefit them. And as he began discussing this, some of the local ladies and some of the people in the community realized that we needed some type of institution to take care of people, and they decided that it was not an orphanage that we needed, but we needed a hospital for crippled children. And this was started with efforts in the state legislature, and over a period of several years they finally managed to get the state legislature to give money to establish an orthopedic hospital, and they looked around and obtained Dr. Oscar Miller, who at that time was practicing in Atlanta with the Shrine Hospital down there, and they asked him to come here to develop the North Carolina Orthopedic Hospital. The hospital was founded on a very low budget, and we were very fortunate to have a lot of support here, and which kept pressure on the legislature to get this institution started.
I was in my second week of the first grade at Victory School and had felt terrible for several weeks, and Dr. Prince checked me and said, "This young man has polio." So he called an ambulance. It was a Friday afternoon, and off we go in the back of the ambulance to the Children's Hospital in Greensboro. And I stayed there for a total of 4 months, actually 5 months.
Well, I came to the polio hospital actually in November of 1952, and David came in September of 1953. And I was brought on board because I was looking for a place to work concentrating in polio. That was my particular interest after having taken some extra training at Warm Springs, Georgia. So I was brought on board because of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which was a fundraising organization to raise money for people who not only had polio, but who were going to work in polio. And through them I found that this opening was at the Greensboro Polio Hospital. When I came, the hospital, I would say, was quite full because this was a pretty peak time when one of the big epidemics was going on. And they were anywhere from infants, tiny little children, to adults. We had quite a few adults, which is quite a heartbreaker to see married women, mothers, fathers, and so forth, who also had polio. As far as the severity of the cases, we'd have everything from something that was relatively mild to people who were in iron lungs.
The iron lung was needed when people couldn't breathe. They had paralysis of their lungs, and obviously without breathing you're not going to survive. So you had to have some method to allow them to breathe. And in the beginning, this was a big metal chamber, and it was hooked up to suction apparatus so that it could cause the chest to expand and then relax with alternating pressures so that the body would force the air in and then take it in and then force it out. And this required electricity 24 hours a day. We had one episode here where we lost power, and we had to have people come in and pump the air into the chamber. So, and you can imagine what a complication that was till we got power back, because we had to have all these people by each bed pumping to keep that person alive. Iron lung was a noisy darn machine, but it saved a lot of lives, and most people managed to get off it. Not either recovered or you died.
In addition to iron lungs, we had the rocking bed, which when a person is being weaned away from an iron lung, they're put on the rocking bed, and the rocking bed would do just exactly what it said. It would rock like this, which would encourage their breathing muscles to work.
On physical therapy day, I was given a tricycle, and I got to ride down the halls to this young lady, and she would do her therapy, and she had a water tank, and I think you'll see pictures of that later. But that was the highlight of today, to see Miss Miller and to be able to ride a tricycle and get out of bed.
The children are absolutely remarkable. We didn't have problems most of the time with any discipline. We didn't have any lack of cooperation from parents or from the children. And one of the funny things that happened one day in the clinic, we're down there. The clinic was downstairs at the lower level, and it was a big hill just outside. And I happened to look up, and I saw these two boys, and these boys were in hip spica casts, and that means they had casts from both legs up onto their body. And they had managed to get themselves out of the ward upstairs, sneaking away from the nurses. They were out there sliding down the hill in their hip spica casts. And it just amazed me that they managed to make it that far.
There was an environment there with the staff that was very joyful. You would think it would be a sad place, but it was a very joyful place. I mean, even from medical records where you're hooked up to a dictaphone, typing clinical notes and trying to understand, medical terminology that is said, but there was just a feeling of joy throughout that hospital.
They seemed like family to me.
They
always.
did seem like
the
family.
Workers there, you take Nancy Hunter and Nellie, and the physical therapist. It was a very united group of people.
And I remember one little girl that was just kind of left there. Her name was Bonnie. And
She was left where at the
at orthopedic,
Oh.
and she was just left there. And so people would gravitate to Bonnie.
There was a tremendous amount of alarm about it, and people did not let their children go out to play. There were not public gatherings, and all that type of activity for children just about completely disappeared during the acute times of year, and that was usually in the fall.
The number of the new victims is rising daily, almost hourly in some towns. And it seems so cruel, so ironically tragic that they should be struck down when we may be on the verge of preventing polio forever. It increases our obligation, our moral responsibility to them.
We treated here at the North Carolina Orthopedic Hospital the patients who had bulbar polio, and those were the patients who were paralyzed and they were in iron lungs. And we had one whole ward here which had about 50 beds in it, and special duty nurses who treated these patients in the acute phase.
I couldn't go to school. They told me I couldn't go back to the first grade, but I had a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, that taught at Victory School, that would come to the house every day and keep me up with my lessons, as she called them. And I passed first grade, went on to the second grade.
Many of the children had to be admitted over a long period of time. We had a school which actually graduated students. We had specialized teachers. We had wonderful support from the community. There was a Boy Scout troop here for the children. The ladies of the community volunteered, and they formed an organization called the Tiny Tim Society. These ladies served as registers for the outpatient clinic. A lot of them did laundry for the children, and the Shriners group took over, and they had parties out here. They used to every year take all the children by, if necessary, ambulance over to Ivy's department store, and Mr. Ivy would see that each child had gifts at Christmas time, and the kids loved it because they came back escorted by the highway patrol with the ambulances and I mean their sirens and all, and the kids just thought that was marvelous.
The polio vaccine came out about 1955, the initial one, and because of it, it really sort of closed up the polio hospital up in Greensboro, so we no longer had a quantity of patients, and the patients were pretty much referred to other clinics. Is unfortunately the elimination of polio internationally has not been accomplished.
Right.
And there are certain areas of the world where they just haven't had the vaccine, or they have forbidden the vaccine. And I think that's what you Rotarians are wanting to do, is to make sure that these countries will in fact let people come in and do the vaccinations as they should.
We are this close.
This close.
Tuturek Modes.
This close to making history.
Ofon Wantinti.
We are this close.
We are this
We're
close.
this close.
This close to changing the world. We are this close to making sure no child suffers a crippling disease
ever again.
We are this close to making history.
We are this close to ending polio.
Because we are this close to ending polio.
We are this close to ending polio.
We are this close
to changing the world.
This close.
All we need is you.
Is you.
It's you.
Is you.
We are this close. This close.
Be a part of history at rotary.org/endpolio.